one thing, I mean, in JPL we love randomized experiments, but not usually random experiments carried out in macroeconomics. It's one of the things we don't recommend is one morning change your money supply by 86%. Or so. That's not one of the recommended policies, and indeed it's something that is fortunately rare in the world. But when you have them, they're really interesting because, you know, thankfully they don't happen often, so you could learn quite a lot from them if you get a chance. That doesn't mean we should have them, but it certainly helps to understand the way economics work. It's also, I think, topical for, so that's sort of the big picture maybe. It's also topical because it's something, it'll get you to, get us to something that I think is of interest also in the local context, which is, does bad economics make good politics? And that's something that we'll come back to at the end. So let me jump in. So what's demonetization? Well, on the 8th of November, when other strange things also happened in the world, you may remember them, there was the government of India decreed that all current 500 and 1,000 rupee bills will be immediately demonetized, meaning they had no more change value. You could deposit them in a bank till the end of the year, but there was no, you're not allowed to use them for transactions. You could presumably give it to people, but not transact with them. There was also an evolving policy conversation that involved, you know, what would be, you know, constraints on this process, and one that I think will be important for what I'm going to say, that eventually it emerged that any deposits of over 250,000 rupees will be potentially subject to some investigation. So it was it was not only that you couldn't hold on to the cash, but that it would also, if you put it in the bank, which was legal, they might actually come after you. So that sort of put you in something of a bind if you had many rupees. That was the intention. I'll come back to why. The immediate policy announcement was that right after they will start issuing new bills, and there was a new 500 rupee bill and a new 2,000 rupee bill. It's interesting. I'll come back to why that might be relevant. Now, it was a kind of the implementation was imperfect. There was about a quarter of the right at the beginning. The amount of money cash that was available was a quarter of what it had been demonetized. So suddenly there was just not enough money. I went to the bank. I asked for some money, and they said, we have had no cash in our bank for the last 3 days. And that was a normal state of affairs for many days. ATMs where you could take out money, but that was capped at 2,500 rupees, and many ATMs also didn't have any money. So there was all kinds of reasons why this happened. One was that they hadn't actually somehow managed to print all the money that they needed. Second, they actually, oddly enough, had changed the format of the bills so that the ATM machines could not actually dispense the 2,000 rupee bill, which made it a little bit harder to replace the money. And then there was lots of encouragement to use electronic money instead. There was a massive expansion of the use of electronic money, 14 million subscriptions to Paytm, which is the biggest mobile wallet company, in just the month of November. So that's 14 million is more than the population of many countries. So it's a lot of action. So why did they do it? So it was not wonderfully implemented, and it's not exactly a normal thing to do. I mean, there are many currencies often demonetized, but usually with warning. You're told that over this period, we will phase out this money and then we'll introduce a new money. And that's happened in India a couple of times before and has happened in many other countries. It's not an unusual thing to do. It was the timing that was unusual. So what were the arguments given? Well, one was that Pakistan was printing counterfeit currency to finance terrorism. That was the first explanation provided. It didn't convince many people, since it seemed to imply that Pakistan couldn't buy enough Indian currency on the world markets to finance terrorism. It just didn't seem plausible. After you thought about it for about 20 seconds, you would think that one, I mean, the world, it's a traded currency, just go to the market, buy it. It's not so much money. So that wasn't going to convince people. So the next idea was that you're going to get rid of what in India is called black money. So people have stocks of money which are, illegally acquired or illegally held on to. So either money you got as a bribe or money that you didn't pay taxes on. So this generic category of black money, the corrupt hold black money. So I think as a stock statement, that's presumably true. We'll come back to whether it made sense as a policy. And then that was the second story. That story started to wear thin for reasons I'll come back to in a minute. So then the third story emerged. The third story was that people should be using electronic money. Electronic money is better. And related to that was the idea that it was good to get people into the formal economy. It's good to get people in a place where their transactions can be taxed, for example. So that at least was made sense. Finally, there was the idea that, well, since all these corrupt people, they're not going to dare to put the money back into the bank. Remember, there was this investigation clause that the government is going to gain a lot of resources because the money won't come back to the bank. Since it doesn't come back to the bank, the government basically money is a kind of a debt of the government, and so the government will have to get to default on a part of its debt. And that would be very good for the government. So that was the last argument that was brought out. Now, most of these arguments are not super watertight. I already mentioned that, the idea that, there's no reason you should definitely do things about counterfeiting, but you don't need to do it all at once. So that didn't seem to be the right argument. On corruption, what's a bit bizarre is that they issued the 2,000 rupee bill. That seemed like an odd thing to do because in the end, what we care is not so much about the stock of black money, but about the flow. The fact that I can go to somebody and say, pay this money under the table to me. But making the bills 2,000 rupee bills instead of 1,000 rupee bills just makes that easier. Your suitcase has to be smaller if the bills are more valuable. So that didn't seem to be quite the right argument either. Moreover, it turned out that it created a new class of the corrupt. These were bankers who were basically, lots of bankers in these months, you heard a lot of reports of bankers being arrested and indicted. And the reason was that there was a huge incentive to basically launder money. So to replace black money by white money, and to do that without acknowledging who the money belonged to.